Hello world, today we're going to put my namesake to use, and we're going to take a hack at the 3D printing professor's latest project, PrintABlok mechs. Joe, the 3D printing professor, is in the middle of a KickStarter to produce 3D printable interconnecting blocks that you can use to build all sorts of toys, robots, tanks, ships, boats if you want, basically whatever you can think of. The core is a unique cube with holes punched out on each side that fit with a very specific little H-shaped connector that goes between the parts to hold them together. I've been lucky enough to be invited to help beta test some of the parts and to give a feedback on my experience while he's developing the KickStarter. If this kind of thing interests you at all, I highly recommend you go check it out after this video. There'll be a link below. The cost to get in is just $10 and it's already fully funded, so this Kickstarter is a sure thing. But you don't have to back the Kickstarter or be in the beta program to contribute ideas. There is an active dedicated channel on his Discord just for the PrintABloks, and there'll be links to that below. You also don't need to be in the beta group to get your hands on the blocks to try them out either. Joe has already released the base block, the connector, and a nifty tool for creating your own blocks, so you can get an idea now of how they will work and any tuning that you might need for your printer in preparation for the full release. They're on My Mini Factory and on Thingiverse right now, and there'll be links below for them as well. Joe's already modeled up quite a few parts. Here's a sample of what he's already completed, but he's adding to it just about daily. There are a variety of base blocks for the core structure of your build. There are articulated parts that have working joints, wheels, legs, feet, vents, accent panels, and some really cool weapons. You could build a chainsaw arm, but I'm holding out for that double-barreled boomstick to go along with it.
Yeah.
Playing around with some of the parts, I quickly got the idea to build a bot in honor of my favorite video game, StarCraft. The grunt backbone of the Terran race is the Space Construction Vehicle, or the SCV. And I was able to get pretty close, but needed a couple of parts that he hadn't created yet, such as the drill, the gripper, and these shoulder intakes and a jetpack on the back. Now Joe has done a fantastic job modeling his files up in Blender, and he's published several videos showing his process. He makes it all look effortless. But I'm not there yet with Blender. However, it was really easy for me to bring a couple of his existing files into TinkerCad and hack them into my own ideas. So to quickly run down how my mech progressed, the drill part was from a library I found in TinkerCad. The gripper part over here was grafted off of an SCV model that I found on Thingiverse, but it wasn't that great, but it got the job done. The shoulder intakes were built on an existing PrintABlok that he'd already created. Same thing for the jetpacks. So then Joe went ahead and released a drill, which of course was much better than the kludge I'd put together, so I swapped it out onto my model, and I also streamlined the gripper here a little bit. Then the tank treads came along, and they had to go on. I also decided I could make the grippers separate individual pieces and attach them to an existing block rather than having to modify a block, and those were modeled from scratch in TinkerCad. But the stance here was it was too high, and I didn't care for these 45-degree angle blocks at the bottom. And then I thought of this guy. And one of the things at Johnny 5 that I've always liked was the side profile, how his torso raked back and he had this kind of cool folding stance. And while we're at it, Joe, I hope you see this. We need lasers. We need robots with frickin' laser beams attached. So that brought me to this final idea.
SCV, good to go, sir.
Which I flipped the legs around, and that let me rake it back even more with this 45-degree angle, and this required 2 more alterations. So the blocks have this diamond-shaped connector which offers 4 different mounting angles every 90 degrees off of the block. But to get the angle that I need for my 45 degrees, I need to rotate that block or that diamond to be more of a square. So that means now that if we look at the punch out on my leg behind the tread, it now looks more like a square instead of the diamond. Yes, I realize that it's actually still the same shape. So I need to either alter my legs with the square, or I need to alter the tread to turn it into from a diamond into a square. And I think what I'm going to do is alter the treads. Since I have 2 mounting points, I can leave one of them as the diamond shape, and I can take the other one and spin it around and make it a square. So the parts can still be mounted as designed on one end, and then my alteration on the other end. And if I decide to reuse them, I have more options. The other thing I needed to get my raked back look with my leg is I needed a 45-degree angle for it to mount to at the top. Now he's already designed a part that does that, but it doesn't have a hole punched into it to receive it. So I had to go ahead and punch that in as well, and that was pretty easy, and I'll show you how we did that. So let's grab this guy and move him out of the way so we got some room to work. And then we're going to import our tank treads. So let's flip them over so we can get a better look at them. So I'm going to fill this front hole right here. And to do that, I'm going to grab the work plane and I'm going to drag it right on top of this face. So now when I drag out a new cube, it's going to sit on top of here instead of on the ground. So now I can actually put that work plane back down on the ground and get it out of my way. With my cube selected and I hit T, it will make it transparent. So I can see through it. And I will grab my handle, I will spin it 45 degrees. We're going to make it just big enough. I'm going to click top here so I can look straight down. Just, don't move that one. Big enough that we cover that punched out area. Perfect. Now, we're sitting up on top and we need it to be down below. So I'm going to click on my tread. I'm going to hit T on it to make it transparent. Hit front so I can look straight down. And now I can see right here is the bottom of that punch out. So if I grab my block up top, I grab this handle, I can pull straight down. And now that will fill that hole. And if I select both of those and hit G, it will group them and make them one solid part. Now, we need to put our punch out in. So let's import the connector negative part that Joe's provided. And it's probably underneath of here. Yep, because we didn't move it. Now, I want to put it in the same place that the other one was. So if I select my part and I go under here and hit multicolor, it'll keep them as one part, but I can see that piece. Now, we could need to get this part, the bottom of it, flush with the top of this. There's a couple things we can do. I could drop a work plane, I can move it on there. I can even select this and cut it, drop a work plane on top of here and paste it, and it'll set it up there, but it's still upside down, and if I rotate it, it's still going to be up. Oh, and another little trick here, if you hit D, it'll drop things down on the ground. I'm going to do something super janky here, but it works. And sometimes in TinkerCAD, that's just what works. If I rotate this over, grab the two of them, and rotate it back, it is now on the same plane. And sometimes TinkerCAD is just about getting the job done quickly. So now I can grab my X, slide it over. I'm going to drop this down to 1/4 millimeter resolution. Yeah, that looks good. While it's still selected, I'm going to make it a hole. Select, group, which also I could hit up here to group. And now I have my hole. I can turn off multicolor and boom, it's good to go. If you don't have anything selected and you hit F, it zooms all the way out. So now we can take our tank tread, whoops, gotta watch when you're grabbing handles that far out, move it out of the way, and it's good to go. So now we need to do our 45-degree block. So now let's import that 90-degree, it's called a 90-degree bend, but it's really, I think of it as a 45-degree that we need to put that hole into. I should have made a copy of my connector or my negative here earlier so I didn't have to import it again, but we will take care of that right now. Now, if I select this connector and cut it, drop a work plane onto this angle face, which is 45 degrees from what used to be the ground, and now I paste, it's going to paste that onto that work plane. The trick is you need to do the copy or the cut while the work plane is still oriented to the part that you're copying, and then you paste once you're onto the new work plane. Now I'm going to put this back because we're going to need it in just a second. So another thing you can do that's, again, it's a little janky, and if anybody knows how to get around this in TinkerCAD, I would love to know. Please drop a line in the comments or tell me. So this work plane has a top and a bottom. When we dropped it on top of this part here, that made the part where the purple part, the negative is, that's the top. This is the bottom. When I select this and hit down, it still goes to there. So what I can do is I can grab this piece, hide it, grab the work plane, drop the work plane on the face of this, bring back my piece. Why are you there? Go away. Now I can select my block and hit down and it drops it right in. It's a little janky, but it's real quick, it's easy, it happens, and that's just one of the deals that happens with TinkerCAD sometimes. Now, I got my block, my punch out's in there, it's wrong orientation. I'll spin it my 45 degrees. I'm going to make it a hole, and before I put the two of those together, I'm going to select them. I'm going to use the Align tool up here, which is also L. I'm going to align it this way and that way, and because my plane is on this face, that puts it right smack in the dab in the middle there. I grab them both, group them, and now my block has a hole in it. Put my work plane back down, and that part's done. So we could put it over here. Now there's our cutout over there because we're probably going to. Now let's take a look at those jetpacks. If I select one of them, hit focus, we can take a look at it. So I've got these vents kind of shooting out down at an angle. I'll show you how we did these. If I click off, and we come back out, we'll import the X panel is the part I used to build this on. And we can see it's this nice kind of flat shape with this little X pattern on the front of it, gives a little bit of interesting detail, and it's got a nice notch out in the bottom of it that we can use to work with. So we're going to start by dragging in a cone. One thing also to note, if we take a look at the original base block, all the block structures are based on 16 by 16 by 16 millimeters. If we look at this X block, it's actually 14. So it's downsized slightly from the main block. So we want to just kind of keep a mindful thought about that when we're putting in our cones. So we probably don't want to have it be its default 20. I'm thinking more like 14 maybe. And we're going to give it a little bit more elongation, flip it around, and we will line these up and drop it down, get an idea for that profile. Let's not have it point down quite so much. Yeah, there we go. Now, I want to make sure all my edges are fully contained. So it doesn't like break out the side here weird, but if we notice, we look at the bottom, it is filling up our punch out. So now we're going to deal with that and the fact that we need a hollow spot in here. Before we get too far, let's crank our sides up so we make this a nice smooth curve. I'm going to drop a work plane on the front of this, and I'm going to duplicate it, and we'll just change the color to a contrasting color so we can get a better idea what we're doing, and pull it out. Whoops. And get a look at it and drag it out just to get an idea of how thick our walls on this cone are going to be. That might be a little too thick. Yeah, I think that looks good. Now, we'll make that a hole, and that's going to punch a hole through our cone and make it hollow. I'm going to drop my work plane back down on here because now I'm not worried about this plane here, but now I'm worried about how this cone interacts with the plane on my block below. So I'm going to click over here to get me a good side angle. I'm going to change this to transparent, and I can see how these intersect. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go and hide my cone, is I'm going to worry, or my cutout part, I'm going to worry about this outer cone and how it interacts with this. So I'll make this transparent as well. And we're going to bring out a box. Oops. It's better not to be looking straight on when you do that, because you never know where we're going to go. So we'll get a little bit more isometric look on here. Grab our box, drag it on here. Everything's fully covered. Great. Now we'll look at our side. And we want to make sure that our new cone isn't interfering with our punch out. So I'm just going to grab this and drag down so that I'm below the X structure. But above the punch out part. So then I can just grab my cone and my cutting block, group them, and great, now it's down. It looks good. So now I can actually take these two, group them, and there's the outer part, and we're not blocking anything in here. So now we'll turn back on, go away, our dome that we're going to use, or our cone that we're going to use to cut out the center, and the same deal. We want to make sure it doesn't cut down into here and have a hole that goes all the way through the block. So bring back out another cutting cube, put it over the top. And we're going to have it come down as well. Make this transparent. Grab the cube. And get it right down, similar deal. Right about in there. They'll make it cut down a little bit into this to give it a little bit more detail, but make sure we're not getting into our punch out. So now we need to make our inner cone here a solid, because we're going to cut our solid with this cube. Group them. Great, now I got that. I can make this solid. We'll make this a hole. Select them, group. Ta-da, done. Put it over here. Now let's take a look at those shoulder pieces. For that one, I used the panel to build on. And if we go over here and look at it, we can see these ridges inside and just a little bit of details sticking out around the side. There is this little like strap or buckle piece along here, but we couldn't see it, so that means that my part that I cut in stopped right before we got to there. So if we look at this again, sorry for the zoom in and out, I could have drawn this by using a cube and then use like a wedge or a roof to cut off the sides and slim it down, but that would have taken 4 cuts. And instead, one more time, what I used was a pyramid. This part is 16, so I'm going to make my pyramid 16, select it, align them, not K, L, and then we'll grab my pyramid and just start dragging it up. I lost all that detail, so I'm going to make my pyramid 15. And I remember that my other shoulder piece that I made was 20 millimeters tall, and boxes, when they come in, are 20 millimeters tall by default. So I can just set that there and get an idea visually looking across here about where I think that's a good angle. I like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep that box because it's marking my 20 millimeter part, turn it into a hole, align it with everything, and then I can grab the bottom of it and just drag it up. Grab the 2 of those, group them, bam. Now I've created this piece right here. So to do my cutout piece, just took this, I duplicated it, and pulled it out a little ways, and then scaled it down till I feel like I got the wall thickness is about right. That looks good. I'm going to turn that into a hole. I think I need to go up a little bit, get it nice and even. Yeah, that's good. But remember, we had that strap in here. So I'm going to click here, make this transparent. Now I can see that back wall where it is in relationship. So I can grab this, and I can either hold down the shift key and drag to constrain that, or just use my arrow keys. And I'm actually going the wrong direction because the belt, this buckle kind of looking box shape, is offset the other direction. So yeah, we'll try that. So if we grab those 2, we can see, all right. So here's a cool little trick in TinkerCad as well. These two pieces, that cutout piece and this piece, were actually grouped together. If I double click on it, it ungroups it, just temporarily. And I can move that out, click off of it, and it puts it back. Now, when those are the same color, don't think it's going to be that noticeable. So cool. Great, we got that. We got our shape here. We got our punch out. We got our little ribs right here. Look at the bottom. Oh, it's full. So that's why I kept this piece out here. Grab, line, it's 45 degrees out, make it a hole, boom, there we go. Cut it back in there, it's good to go. So now we have created, let's turn around so we can see it. Come on, grab the handle. There we go. Our shoulder piece, our tank treads, our jetpack, and our angled piece to rake our legs back. Now, let's just take a quick look at this piece here. If we just look at it as transparent, we can see it's just shape here that I did a punch in the bottom on. And this was pretty simple, really. Grab a box, spin it 45 degrees, and then if you stretch it, it'll stretch out like a triangle or a diamond shape, and that's how I got the base shape here. And then I was able to take a wedge, rotate it around, make it a hole, put one on this end, put one on the other end to cut back and get my angles on the front and the back. Grab another block, stretch it out, make it narrow. For this piece here, grab another wedge, put it on the front to cut back my angle. Grab another wedge, spin it around, bring it up, stretch it out. To get this ridge across the top. It was that easy. So, and then I used my little punch out piece to put in the bottom to punch my own hole in the bottom of it in a location that felt like it was a nice safe area to be clear of everything. And so that part I made completely from scratch. I didn't use a base block for it.
Job's finished.
So in the course of about 20 minutes, we altered two existing parts to meet a specific need, created two new parts based on existing blocks, and saw how I created a whole new block from scratch. I'm really excited about this Kickstarter and the awesome potential for your creativity that it encourages. Hopefully this video has given you a glimpse into what might be possible with the blocks that will be provided, but also that there's no reason that we should be worried about being limited by only those blocks that are provided, even though it looks like there's going to be a plethora of parts that come with this Kickstarter to play with. Now, before you flame me in the comments about TinkerCad being a kid's tool and how Fusion or Blender or OpenSCAD are better tools, consider that we are literally making toys here. If you really want to dial it up though, and really want to get out the big guns, then consider supporting the 3D printing professor over on his Patreon. For just $3 a month, he regularly shares his Blender files with his patrons. But I would also ask you to consider this. I have two kids that have loved playing with these PrintABloks, and they are both comfortable in TinkerCad. They use it at school. Fusion, Blender, and heaven help us OpenSCAD are way over their heads. They have the tools right now to go in and make their own parts. Now, how great an experience could it be as a parent and a child working together, or a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle to spend some time together sharing the magic of 3D printing and allowing a child to exercise their imagination by creating something that is uniquely theirs. Come on, do it for the kids! Now, if you've made it this far, thank you. You're truly amazing. Make sure to check out the links below that I've mentioned. Consider subscribing, do the bell thing, leave a comment, and all that other stuff that everybody ends their videos with. Thank you.